All right, we are live and recording.
Great, thanks, Ash. Okay, we might get started. I'm running a little blind here. I can't see anyone at the moment. All I can see is the presentation. I can't set it up the way I want to set it up, so apologies for that. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining in on our August virtual meeting. So this is, we've been doing this now since about March this year, and it's turned out to be quite a successful format for us to reach a wide audience across the country and indeed overseas. So welcome everyone. Just a few housekeeping items. Our president, Peter Aylward, will be joining us a bit later. He's working and he's in Sydney tonight. So he'll join us in about 20 minutes time or thereabouts. Just a few items to remember: to mute your microphone and have your headphones and speakers on, obviously. Just a reminder that we'll be recording the session tonight, and that will go up on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. So for those of you that want to relive the glory, or for those who can't be with us tonight, they'll be able to see a recording of the session. Just a reminder that we have a Slido platform for asking questions. So I'll put the link in the chat for people to use. And if you could try and put as many of your questions in that format, that would be great. That helps us to moderate it and to make sure we get to everyone, that kind of thing. So we'll put that link up in the chat. And as always, there's more information on our website, space.asn.au. Okay, so what we're planning to do tonight is our usual sort of formula. So we'll have about 15 minutes of me talking SAA business, just an introduction to the night and to what's happening. If Peter is here on time, he'll do some Australian space news at 7:45. That will run through to 8 o'clock. And then we have David Ball. He's the chair of the Space Industry Association of Australia, and he'll be giving an overview of the SIAA and some recent events in the Australian space industry. And at 8:15 or thereabouts, depending on how we're going to move this about, we've got Marcus House. And Marcus is from Tasmania, and he runs an absolutely fabulous YouTube channel, and he's going to give us an update on SpaceX activity and a few other things. And that should be a real highlight of the night. We'll also have a Q&A, so save up your questions or send them to the Slido page. There's some of the things that Marcus will be talking about tonight. And then Peter will be talking about sort of global space news later on. And depending when he gets here, he may also be doing the Australian space news then as well. And we'll hope to end at about 9:30. So the formal part of the meeting will end at about 9:30. In recent months, people have been hanging around until about 10 o'clock. So feel free to do that if you can. A bit of a chat, a bit of a social. And if any of our speakers are able to hang around, then they're most welcome to do that as well. And we can have a nice discussion. So that's what we're looking at tonight. There's that Slido address again, which we'll put in the... just for our members, just a reminder that we're due to have the Space Association AGM, and we're required to have that until by the end of May. But due to the coronavirus, we have applied for an extension to that. So we're looking at when we're going to have that. But just so stay tuned, and we'll work out whether we can have that in person, or whether we have to go with a virtual event. So just a reminder of that for our members. And just a summary for those of you who are coming to our meeting tonight for the first time. Just a reminder that our meetings are held on the fourth Monday of the month. They're free to all, and we obviously have guest speakers, news rounds up, retrospectives, and member activities. So sometimes we have our members talk about tours they've conducted or things they've been doing. As I mentioned earlier, we normally meet in person in South Melbourne, and we live stream the meetings. But since March, we've been holding our meetings via Zoom. So
Michael?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Do you want to explain to people how to use Slido?
Well, basically what we'll do is maybe Ash can put the Slido address in the Zoom chat. And if you click on the link, it will open a window in your web browser, and essentially you're able to ask questions in that format. You can either remain anonymous, or you can put your name, first name, whatever, it doesn't matter, and you can ask questions. And all of those questions go onto the list. Now, if someone follows up, they can either add a separate question, or they can vote up your question. So if you have the same question as someone else, you can actually tick it, and then it will go up in the list. And then by the time we get to the questions, we'll go through the list. It's fairly easy to use, but it's a matter of clicking on the link and then adding your questions into a web browser. So
thanks, Mike.
I'll
sorry everyone, I put a dot at the end of the link. So if there's a dot at the end of your links, don't use that. So just remove the full stop.
Okay, just a reminder that the Space Association of Australia has or produces a long-running space-themed radio program, which goes to air every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's broadcast on 88.3 Southern FM here in Melbourne, but it's also streamed online at southernfm.com.au. And we also do podcasts of various features from that space program. And the show's been going since 1991, and it's called The Space Show. And if you're interested in Australian and international space news and features, then that's the place to be on a Wednesday night. Some of you might be aware that we also run something we call the Australian Space Network, which is a Meetup group on the Meetup network. And basically the way we've organised our Meetup group is that we are trying to be a directory or a listing of all different sort of space-related events across Australia. As you might expect, there are somewhat fewer events that are listed there at the moment because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but all the same, you might be interested in going to Meetup, and it's free to join, and you can see that's the address there, meetup.com, and search for Australian Space Network. So these are the meetings that are coming up for the rest of the year. Remembering the formula is the fourth Monday of the month, except for December when we have some kind of social event in the middle of the month. Of course, we're not quite sure what will be happening on this year, but these are certainly the dates. And at this stage, September 28th is shaping up to be another virtual meeting as we're having now. And we're going to have a special guest live from Boston in the United States. And he's the author of a book called Spacefarers: How Humans Will Settle the Moon, Mars and Beyond. Gentleman's name is Christopher Wanjak. I don't know whether anyone's familiar with him, but I think that should be quite an interesting meeting, and we'll be talking and having a conversation with Christopher, and he'll be talking about his book and some of the concepts and things. So we've definitely have that locked in for the next meeting on the 28th of September, Monday, the 28th of September. And obviously there'll be updates and news and how to register and all of that kind of stuff coming out shortly after this meeting is over. But we do know that Christopher's very keen to talk to us, and sounds like it will be a really interesting talk. And again, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and so forth in the usual way. Christopher is a health and science writer based in Baltimore. He's previously the author of Bad Medicine and Food at Work, and has written lots of articles for the Washington Post, Sky and Telescope, Astronomy, and so on. So should be good. I think it's quite interesting that from 1998 to 2006, he was a senior writer at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. So he's obviously well placed to talk about these kind of topics. And as I said, he'll be live from Baltimore on our September 28 meeting. Yes, we'll also be having a member giveaway of a copy of the book Spacefarers. So that will be for members only, but there'll be more information about that coming out. And there's Christopher. So we're a member-based organisation, obviously. Everything that we do is basically funded through the subscriptions to our association. And if you're not already a member, or you're a member who has whose membership has lapsed, then we certainly warmly welcome you to come back, and we'd be pleased for you to join up again. So so you can join or renew online at our website, space.asn.au. Yeah, so the other thing we've locked in for next meeting on Monday, September 28th, is apart from Christopher talking about his book and the concepts in his book, we're also looking to have a preview of the various policies of the US presidential campaigns. So looking forward to whichever candidate becomes president in November, or strictly, of course, in January next year. We're looking ahead to see the differences in their space policies and what each of the candidates has said about their future of their space program. So that will be part of our next meeting as well. We'll also have some Australian space news. Oh, and as I said, this was going to be presented by Peter. Peter's not here at the moment, so we will come back to this later on in the meeting, and he'll present this. So what I'll do now is David Ball online? I can't see.
Yes, I am.
Oh, fantastic! Great. Let me sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I can't find your introductory slide at the moment. So what I'll do is because as I said, Peter was going to be doing this, so I apologise for that. So I'd like to welcome David Ball. David is the chair of the Space Industry Association of Australia, and he is going to give us a bit of an update on what's been happening in the Australian space sector, but also with an overview of the Space Industry Association. I can see Peter's online. So Pete, I'm just about to throw to David, and we'll go from there if that's okay with you. Are you ready? Yep. Great. Okay.
Got the thumbs up from Peter, so it's all good.
So it's all good. So David, welcome, and please, are you going to share your screen, or do you?
No, I was just going to do a quick introduction, and happy to take any questions as we go through.
Fantastic. That's
keep it pretty interactive if we can.
Okay.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Peter, for the invitation to come and speak to you tonight. It's a great pleasure to speak with the association. To give you a view of the Space Industry Association of Australia, I'm the current chair of the organisation, having been on the board for probably more years than I care to remember. So a little bit about me. My day job is to head up space for Lockheed Martin for Australia and New Zealand. Recently took over that position following Rod Drury's elevation to the Vice President of International for Space for Lockheed. So Rod now deals with all of the international business for Lockheed in the space sector globally outside of North America. So I focus on Australia and New Zealand for Lockheed. Prior to that time, I was with CEO of the Space Environment Research Centre up at Mount Stromlo, which is researching into the space debris problem, orbital debris, a little bit of space situational awareness. The CRC is running towards its end now. All CRCs have a natural life. Ours is about 6 years. So the CRC is finishing up its research, and we're moving into the wind down phase now. So it's time for me to head out. My career since I left the Air Force way back when as a communications engineer, got into the private satellite communications industry with a company called Pan Amsat, which was the world's first privately owned satellite communications company. I was the head of engineering for Asia Pacific. Did sales for a while, moved to the US for a few years with the company, ran global customer engineering and some satellite payload design work, satellite coordination, frequency coordination, and so forth. Came back to Australia just after the September 11 attacks, actually. Back to Australia and ran the Asia Pacific region for the company for many years. Left there and went to NewSat, which was a startup company in Australia. I was CTO there, looking to build our first satellite. Unfortunately, we ran out of equity, and the receivers turned up and ended up in receivership. From there, I went back into defence for a while to look at the defence use of communications for all the new projects they're working on. And they're into Circ and now to Lockheed. So all that time I've been focused also on the Space Industry Association. As I said, been a member for many years, probably close to 17, 18 years now, and been on the board for much of that time, helping to run the organisation and just give back to the industry that puts food on my table on a weekly basis. I think it's very important we all contribute back, as you're all doing tonight, to the industry that we all love. So the SIAA, we're a non-profit organisation. From small beginnings, when I took over as treasurer many years ago, we had about 20 or so members. Today we have about 720 members, I think, at the last count. So we've had a massive increase in membership in recent years. A lot of that's attributed to the work we did to sponsor IAC in 2017 to come to Adelaide. We were the host organisation. We had a great success with that event. We had some 4,500, 5,000 delegates to that event. It was one of the larger IACs outside of Europe. And that really, we think, was a step function in the space industry in Australia to inspire folks to go and put a space agency together and to start doing more work into the space industry. As I said, the organisation has grown strongly from there. We have a board of 7. I chair the board, as I mentioned. My deputy chairs are Melissa Deswart from Adelaide University and Tim Parsons, who's heads up Delta V in Sydney. Also out of Adelaide, we have Julia Mitchell and Mark Ramsey, Gail Isles out of RMIT, and most recently, Carly Scott has joined the board. Carly is the CEO of Equatorial Launch Australia. So amongst all the board members, we have a great mix of folks in the technical side, different verticals such as launch with Carly. Gail has a lot of work on the human side of space flight. Mark and Julia are working on satellite payloads, and you have heard my history working around this industry for a long time. So it's good to have a board that has a mix of experience, as well as a number of us have professional training in corporate governance through the Australian Institute of Company Directors. And that's very important, you have an organisation with that right governance. We also are supported by an advisory council of about 20 members from all areas of the industry who help supporting us looking at different issues in detail. Through the advisory council's efforts, we've recently done submissions to the agency in relation to the Launches and Returns Act, the changes that were done there, the Moon to Mars consultation, and many of the other ASA consultations that have been out over the last couple of years. We do work very closely with the agency. We have this quarterly meeting with them, with Anthony Murfitt and with all of his directors, to talk through behind closed doors the issues we see in industry, to get a view from the agency as to what they're working on and where they see things progressing in their various initiatives. It's a very open discussion. We do have a very strong relationship with them. I think we've seen a lot achieved by the agency in the 2 years in which they've been established. It's only July of 2018. They've just had their 2nd birthday. They've achieved a lot in terms of setting strategy, establishing the agency from a standing start. But now we see they've got some pretty big initiatives ahead of them with the Moon to Mars program, which is 150 million of government funding to help Australian companies enter the international supply chain, specifically around NASA's Moon to Mars project. So that funding is not for NASA, it's for Australian companies to build capability, to enable them to enter the supply chain, create projects and get onto that on-ramp. And that's one of the most challenging things we see in Australia, is for companies to commercialise their technology and make that leap into commercial sector. From an association point of view, as I mentioned, we've got around 720 odd members. That ranges from the large corporates such as Lockheed Martin and Boeing and others, through to small corporates, our local companies such as Geospatial Intelligence here in Canberra, Nova Systems, a number of other companies, Clearbox Solutions out of Canberra as well, through to our academic institutions, ANU, RMIT, Adelaide University, and so forth, through some of the research organisations, non-profit organisations. We also have a number of government departments and state government entities are members, as well as a large number of individual members. And it's very important to have the individual members to bring in the grassroots side of the industry. Now, the industry in Australia is growing. We are lifting up our industry capability, and that happens from the small and medium enterprises getting into these larger contracts and working harder on that. In terms of activities, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work on the regulatory side and feeding back to the agency. Obviously, we can't have events now with the COVID issue going on, so we've initiated a number of webinars for our members. And we started out with the inaugural webinar with Anthony Murfitt, Deputy Head of the agency. We've done webinars on the graduate side of things, the STEM careers webinars on cyber security for space, and a number of other webinars planned in the coming months. So I encourage you to look at the website. Please join up. We have introductory membership is actually free for the first year, and we'd love to have you on board to learn more about what we're doing and where the industry is headed. The association also has a small grants program to do a number of grants. We do 2 grant cycles a year to enable our members to not run events now, but plan events, obviously, to work out how to engage their specific communities. Maybe if the Moon Treaty, specific activities on Returns Act and launches and so forth. So we deal with all parts of the sector. Going forward, we'll look to continue a number of those webinars in coming months, excuse me, I should say. And we see a lot of benefit to members there while people are disconnected geographically. Looking at the industry in Australia, the industry is challenging in many respects for our companies. We see the grants programs the agency runs. We see small companies coming through. The majority of the money in projects in space today is coming from the Department of Defence. We see a number of large defence programs in space coming through in the next few years. We have JP 9102, the Future MilSatCom program, 9360, which is the Space Surveillance Network, and a bit further out is DEF 799, which will look at a space Earth observation capability, a geospatial intelligence capability for defence. So a lot of programs on the defence side of things, but it's all very important that we bring Australian industry into those conversations wherever possible and make sure there's most opportunity for our members. Of course, we have the launch side of things in Australia. A number of launch companies planning their activities at launch sites in Northern Territory, Queensland and South Australia, but also the launch vehicles to go with those are being developed. So exciting side of things on the upstream capability to build satellites in Australia, a number of companies around Australia doing that. And also on the downstream side, looking at how the capabilities get used and where those users come from. So it's very important we look at the end user side of this as to who off-takes our services and who can help shape the sector going forward. Michael and Peter, I might pause there and ask if there's any questions on the association or where we're headed at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Do we have any questions at this time?
Hi everyone. Sorry I was late. Thanks so much, David. I've got a couple of questions. The Space Industry Association, I assume that part of your brief is political advocacy and policy influence. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. The advocacy work is really, today we do a lot of that through the agency since its establishment. We did a lot of work lobbying, I think, before the agency was set up to work the various halls around Canberra to look at influencing that decision. We like to think that bringing the IAC to Australia, which was no mean feat, it was like 2 years of nights and weekends for myself as treasurer to help run that through. We did a lot of work on that event to bring it to Australia. That was really one of the things I think made government understand the importance of space. Today, now the agency is established, we work, as I said, closely with them on these various initiatives, having those conversations on different things they're looking at. You know, Moon to Mars Treaty, the Moon to Mars Grants Program, returns activities, and so forth. We also do talk with ACMA on frequency coordination, and we're looking to try and have some further work in some of those policy areas and capability areas in some of our future webinars.
Wonderful. Some of the feedback I've received from people that have been dealing with the agency is that they do great presentations, but a lot of the support they provide is a cost recovery type thing. So they've got to go ahead and spend their X number of $1,000s before they can get the possible return back in order to progress forward. And a lot of small businesses don't have the financial capacity to be able to do that. Is that your kind of understanding of what some of the loopholes or some of the limitations of the agency is at this stage?
Yeah, I think the agency, as I said, is still evolving and still forming. You know, there's going to be a leadership change there early next year, I guess. At this point, I'm not sure when the change is taking place in terms of the new head, because Megan will step down. There's been a search going on for the new leadership. But to your point on the cost recovery, I've seen that issue, and I've heard some of our members on that point. The agency does have their masters within government who do look at full or partial cost recovery for some of these exercises. The agency sometimes has to engage outside firms to help in the more technical aspects of their evaluation. So there are times when they will have to spend money to evaluate applications and so forth. The ACMA, the frequency coordinator, the spectrum coordinator for Australia, also has those constraints on cost recovery for those people who are filing for satellite spectrum. So the satellite business does have its costs when you move outside of for example, the amateur frequency bands. When you're looking to do commercial activities on satellite, that all costs money and is something that the ACMA will bill you for. So both agencies do have their challenges when it comes to having to run that cost recovery exercise.
Wonderful. So, David, are you intending to stay around this evening on the session, or?
Possibly not. I've got a couple of things I have to do for the day job, unfortunately.
Oh, no worries. Okay. I'm just about to do like a little 15-minute Australian space news summary. So I don't know whether you want to stay around for that and maybe have some comments on some of those things that may or may not be relevant.
Yeah, sure. I can probably stay on for a little bit for that. Yeah, sure.
All right. Mike, you happy for me to take over now? Switch to me. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate that. It's really wonderful to have you on board. I'm just going to share my screen now. And now I'm hoping that you can see can somebody give me a confirmation you can see my screen?
I can't see your screen at the moment.
I can see it and you're looking good, Peter.
Yep. Okay. Mike, you're having that problem again, are you?
I am. I must be.
All right. Well, I'm going to push forward. So thanks, everyone. Sorry I was late. Just got stuck coming through from work. So I'm just going to do a quick little summary of Australian space news. It's by no means comprehensive, and it might be a little bit out of date, but I've tried to sort of gather a few bits and pieces that might be relevant and of interest to people. So we were just talking about the Australian Space Agency. I've got a couple of items here. So they've got calling for a space industry missions consultation. So they're seeking information from local space industry for intended and desired near-term space missions, including Moon and beyond. The consultation is interested in finding out about the missions involving research, development, enabling technologies, promotion and potential of the commercial sector. Now this submission closes on the 7th of September, so if you're interested in doing that, they'll also be consulting to create a database of Australian payloads and draw on this database, designing future and existing future opportunities, etc. So as it says, the access to space is a big priority area for the Australian Civil Space Strategy. So once again, if you want to make a submission, you can either try to copy this link or just do a search, or go to the Australian Industry Government website and do a search. I'm sure you'll come up on it there. There is an email address at the top and a phone number if you want to go that way. They've just announced the Hayabusa 2 re-entry capsule will be landing, and the agreement's been signed in South Australia. So that'll be returning to Earth on the 6th of December this year. So that'll be wonderful if it lands successfully. Samples from the 4.5 billion-year-old Ryugu will be on board. So this will be the first ever subsurface asteroid sample return. So this is the one where they touched down and basically hit a little explosion, which caused some debris to come off the asteroid, and then they collected some of those particles. So, and they put it into a capsule and bring it back. So they hope to gain insights in the origin of the solar system. So obviously there's been a bit of a delay, but they're making sure that they're planning it with COVID-19 in mind. Another consultation, this time with CASA, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and their CASR regulations. And they've proposed amendments related to the recent changes relating to space launches and returns for low power and high power rocketry. So there might be a few people here or know people here that want to add some input back to CASA on that. And so once again, if you want to find out more, do a search or go to the CASA website, and I'm sure there'll be a link there to do that. And that closes later this month. So if you want to get in quick smart. Some nice news. The Parkes Radio Telescope has been added to the National Heritage List. The Minister for Environment, Susan Lee, announced that, and it's been commonly called the dish, per the movie, etc. So it's been recognised for its contribution to Australian astronomy and also humanity's understanding of the universe. So that's kind of nice. So it was constructed back, the finished construction was 1961, and basically it's almost 60 years old. And so it's a radio telescope, unlike perhaps was depicted in the movie The Dish. It doesn't send anything, it's not a transmitting device, it's a receiver. So it's a radio telescope, and it was used to receive signals from deep space and also during the Apollo missions and various components. Of course, it alongside Honeysuckle Creek were instrumental in bringing the TV pictures from the first moonwalk from Apollo 11 back in 1969. So in this picture at the bottom here is people during the Apollo 15 mission. Some of the equipment there, the NASA equipment that was installed to support that mission. Of course, Apollo 15 was the first mission to include a moon rover, so they had the command module in orbit, the lunar module on the surface, and the rover and the communications. And so all of the communications and things like that was handled, getting more and more complex as the missions progressed. Some other space news. Southern Launch signs a brokerage agreement with Host MI. So this German-based online platform facilitates the matching of payloads with available launch capacity. So it's kind of like your, I don't know, what's that, hire a hubby type thing where you just say, I want to do something. Here's this app. or this software platform that allows you to match up your launch requirements with a service provider. So of course, Southern Launch is a launch provider of launch services in South Australia, and so they think it's a good synergy. So for those who don't recall, I think last month we had Southern Launch on, and they've got 2 launch sites in South Australia, Whalers Way, and I can't quite read the other one, which is another launch site for suborbital test rocket launches. Somebody here will know all those details. So I look forward to seeing some launches out of there. So the launch agreement, so basically the premise of their system is that every rocket launch has a certain capacity, and so they're basically able to match up the mass and the capacity and the orbit requirements with people that want to send stuff up. So makes a lot of sense for both sides of the equation. So kind of like your Uber for space. Queensland is a step closer to having a liftoff, a launch site in Queensland. So the government is moving to cement a position as a regional leader in space launch technologies. So they've got a launch site, an orbital launch site near Abbott Point in North Queensland. I hope you can make out the map there. It's kind of halfway up the Queensland coast, on the coast obviously, at Point Abbott. So that's, currently there's an industrial site there that has a lot of other type of industries there, shipping and that type of thing. So this is, they've got the Queensland Space Industry Strategy Commitment that they've enacted, the government. So this is a quote from their Minister, Jones. So it's the industry already supports 2,000 jobs, generates $760 million in annual revenue for Queensland businesses, and they want to grow those numbers. So yeah, people think, well, we're not doing much in space. So, you know, and so David will attest to this. There's actually quite a lot of activity going on in Australia with relation to space. So yeah, it seems like the Queensland government are really kicking into it and getting themselves behind. So they've got an $8 million Queensland space industry strategy for 2020 to 2025. And by 2025, the Queensland space industry will be recognised as the leading centre of Australasian launch activities and ground systems, Earth observation, niche manufacturing, robotics and automation. And there's a nice little cartoon. I don't know whether you can make this out on the Zoom, but one small step for Bowen, one giant leap for Queensland's technology future. And the guy's asking, is it coal-fired? I'll leave that to you contemplate. All right, another Queensland story. Amero secures a rocket, well, it's not Queensland, it's a Victorian story. Rocket engine component purchase from Gilmore Space, a Queensland-based organisation. So this is a Victorian additive manufacturing specialist, and they've secured a purchase order for 2 rocket motor components. I don't know any details of what part of the motor it is, but it's great and gives Victorian businesses a bit of hand in the space manufacturing process. So we'll keep an eye on that for you and maybe give you some more updates when we get more details, and maybe we'll try to get some information from Amero. So 2 components will be manufactured under an initial order, and they're hoping to get more business out of that. So good on them. Okay, so tomorrow afternoon, I should say, 2 p.m, there is a free webinar session happening, reimagining space and spatial industry for growth. So there's quite a distinguished panel of guests, and they'll hear about the plan to grow space and space industry in Australia. Some of the panelists, Professor Annie Korinos, CEO and Managing Director of SmartSat CRC, Dr. Peter Woodgate from SmartSat CRC, Amanda Kappels, these names may be familiar to a lot of people, the Victoria's lead scientist, Michael Clark, Director of Technical Strategy from Thales Australia, and some more Amazon Web Services New Zealand speaker, Alec Subik, I've got the name right there, from RMIT University, and it'll be hosted by Associate Professor Simlon Choi and Professor Alison Keeley. So the event is organised by the RMIT Space and Spatial Capability Cluster at RMIT, and this RMIT, Early Space Research Centre, in collaboration with RMIT, enabling capability platforms. So the best thing to do, I'm not going to give you the URL, go to Eventbrite and do a search on that. And so 2 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, Eastern Australian time. All right, that's enough for me on the Australian space scene. So if Marcus is ready to go, I will stop sharing my screen. And once again, I don't know whether, Dave, you had any comments on any of those stories? Please go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Peter. It's great to see those growth initiatives in country. Particularly, you start to see new launch facilities being established, the launch facilities in Adelaide and in South Australia and Queensland, but also you see there Gilmore buying from an Australian supplier to help build their rockets. And that's what this is all about, is industry buying from Australian industry, trying to build up capability. One of the hardest things we have for our members is getting that qualification of the product, taking it from laboratory, low technical readiness level, up the scale to a commercialised product. That's one of the real challenges members have and industry has, so that's wonderful to see. Just in terms of the space and spatial work tomorrow, the conference, SIAA is working with the SmartSat CRC to help develop a roadmap for space and spatial. We call it the 2030 roadmap, to map out where industry needs to go, and that's going to go to government, all areas of government, to help educate and communicate where space and spatial can go together as a combined industry to help this nation along. But Peter, I won't make any more commentary, but great summation there of what's going on, and plenty happening in Australia at the moment, which is wonderful to see. Thank you.
Great. And it looks like Naomi Cooper's put the link to that event in the chat there, so everyone can go to that. Thank you. All right, I'll just grab the screen for a second, and then I'm just going to introduce our next speaker, and we'll be good to go. So Marcus, I assume you're ready to go, are you there?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, this is my introduction to David, which I didn't get to do, but anyway, that's okay. All right, so we've got, I'll just quickly introduce it. We've got a SpaceX activity update from Marcus, and hopefully people can recognise what that image I'm showing there is. So Marcus is famous around the world for his YouTube channel, which I've just got a quick snapshot of here. And I've just put a bit of a quote that Marcus introducing himself there. Marcus might want to talk to that himself. He wasn't around when they landed on the moon, though. Oh no, these kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know,
right.
obviously, these kids. Yeah, obviously, it's extremely exciting for all of us that haven't gotten to experience the Apollo missions and that sort of thing. You know, 1972. I was born in 1980, so I missed out on everything there, and it just seems to have taken forever to get back to where there's some excitement again. You know, to be exploring the moon, exploring Mars. With humans, obviously, instead of robotic vessels. So I find it extremely exciting, everything that's going on. There's a big focus with SpaceX right now, especially in terms of interactivity with audiences and that sort of thing around the world. And that's not to play down all the other amazing space agencies that are doing incredible things. I love them just as much as I love SpaceX, but in the end, SpaceX tends to get a lot more airtime there. They tend to be much more open, sharing much more footage. They've got all these wonderful things going on, which we'll talk about. And I just find it extremely exciting to watch how fast all this plays out. And also, you know, many of these explosions that happen and all this sort of thing. So, you know, they're not just hiding all this stuff away. You know, the disasters, the failures that they go through is all there for us to watch and marvel over and laugh at, and, you know, debate in threads about whether this is a stupid idea or not a stupid idea. You know, it's just incredibly wonderful to be able to experience something that's always been quite hidden away. And that's really what a lot of my channel is about. And if I share my screen quickly with that, and excuse me if I...
No worries, I'll go ahead and mute and I'll hand the floor to you. So thanks.
Yeah, No worries at all. I'll share a couple of things here, if I can figure out what I'm doing. Okay, I think I've got that going on. Just let me know if you can see stuff. So yes, that's here's my channel. So yes, I'm Marcus House. I've got a reasonable presence on YouTube. I certainly wouldn't say I'm famous. I'd be much more inclined to say that I've passed the qualifying round on YouTube, where I've been able to get a silver play button back here, which is that was 100,000 subscribers there. It was a huge deal for me. It took a long time to get to that point. I've been doing this for roughly 4 years, and it's really only this last 12 months that's really exploded for the channel. And I think really that's due to, again, that focus with SpaceX and the excitement that comes around that. So, you know, as we go through some of the videos and content, I started off with a lot of simulation stuff for anybody that happens to have played Kerbal Space Program or any other simulation game. The channel started off quite dedicated around you know, making these fun simulations, trying to land simulation Falcon Heavies and booster landings, and just making vessels in the game or the simulation that inspired a lot of people. So that's where the channel started. It was slow going at that stage because really the market, I guess, for that was fairly small. It was one sort of simulation game, and as I evolved into doing simulations of Falcon Heavies and SpaceX vessels and things like that, and more advanced Saturn V simulations, things started to kind of explode out and into the documentary style or the news feed style that I've got right now. So essentially, ever since roughly middle of last year sometime, things started to kick off to the point where I was very much focusing on SpaceX being the opening to these videos, and then trying to put as much content from other space agencies into the mix that I could. And that seems to have been working really well. And if we sort of have a look at various topics through there, obviously I cover a lot of stuff on Starlink, a lot of stuff on this new Starship development, which is going ballistic, you know, Crew Dragons, all these things. And, you know, it's given us a lot of great opportunity to build up quite an audience and quite a set of, you know, quality control members that help me. They donate their time to me just because they love this stuff so much. So there's stuff there which I'll talk more about. But yeah, so currently I've got a little goal of hitting 200,000 subscribers by October. It's a stretch goal. I don't know if it's going to make it or not, but currently at 184,000. So it's a fairly considerable following. And when it comes down to it, the amount of watch time and the amount of viewership and that sort of stuff, it goes over even my head. After a while, it just becomes numbers, and you stop kind of comprehending the sheer amount of people that are watching your stuff. The audience that I have in Australia is not that large. Most of, you know, it tends to be, I think it's roughly 40 to 50% USA is the is the viewership that I've got there. So, and then, you know, the rest scattered around the world. So that's that's just a rough introduction to myself. I live in Tasmania. I've actually never been and watched a real launch from the US before. It's one dream of mine that I've had for a long time, and we're hoping to be able to do that soon. I'm probably closer to New Zealand or something to go and watch a Rocket Lab launch, which I think is equally exciting what they're trying to do, which we'll talk about as well. But so that's just a quick introduction to myself there. So I'll just, I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay and that I'm coming through. Somebody just give me a thumbs up. It's just a little bit hard to know all the time whether it's coming through okay. So give me a yell if it's not. So yes, I'll just start off with a little bit of information on Crew Dragon. So Crew Dragon has obviously been a huge, just a huge thing that has been, I think, understated to a certain extent. Obviously, this launched quite a few months ago. A few months ago now. There was a huge build-up to this mission. And we were watching every step of the way this amazing Crew Dragon vehicle come back. It had only flown once before on the Demo 1 mission, and then it came back, and then there were some interesting issues with the Crew 1 vessel. Actually, the Crew Demo 1 mission exploded because of a few issues with the fueling setup and whatnot. So we sort of went through this quite nervous set of months while that was all being worked out, and then everything here kind of started to gel, and of course we were able to watch the real flight take off, and yeah, it was just incredibly awesome to watch all this play out. And when it comes down to it, some of the amazing technology around this vessel has actually been downplayed a little. Originally, the idea was that the Crew Dragon would come down and land propulsively. And I'll just pause what I'm doing here. I'm not sure how well that video stream's coming through there. Again, thumbs up if it's okay. But I just wanted to share a couple of things. And Tony Bella is one of those amazing people. And I think a lot of people here are probably familiar with Tony's work. Tony's also from Australia, and just makes these wonderful illustrations. And we like to incorporate a lot of this stuff into the material because it just adds so much more impact to the way that we can present this material. And little events like this was the in-flight abort test earlier in the year that we just saw. These tests are something that you don't often see. They just trashed that booster. That booster just exploded. It was just an amazing thing to see. That was all at the start of this year, well before the mission took off. But Tony's wonderful graphics there coming up there, we can just sort of see how this mission was going to play out, and we were all very excited about what was going to go on there. The beautiful the beautiful illustrations of the booster landing on the drone ship, which has basically become commonplace at this point. And these are the sorts of things that really get people excited. A lot of this material that lets us illustrate what's coming up, what's going to happen, and all that sort of stuff. Docking scenes from the previous year. So this was from the crew demo mission that I talked about earlier. So we can go through all those things, demonstrate to the audience the amazing stuff that's going to occur. And of course, the actual launch all happened. I'll just skim through this a little more. The launch all happened. It all came down, landed beautifully, and but in the meantime, of course, they were doing some pretty cool stuff up on the space station. So Bob Behnken, Doug Hurley, just wonderful people. We were watching them all the way up to the launch and keeping track of them. And here's Bob doing some replacement stuff, doing a series of spacewalks, actually, replacing the old battery technology that they've got up on the International Space Station. And just being able to watch this stuff live with NASA is always great, but NASA also offers a lot of great footage. If you see Bob Behnken there, that's such a great shot of him just giving the thumbs up. And, you got these beautiful shots of the Crew Dragon there just attached to the International Space Station. Meanwhile, we've got lots of great simulations going on at the time, all done by SpaceX. So it gives everybody a great way to witness all of this stuff, really in a lot of detail as well. Like I often do say, I wish that NASA had a lot more 1080p material, because a lot of this stuff's actually downscaled, which is always interesting. You'd think that they'd be pushing this stuff a little more. And actually, other space agencies, United Launch Alliance, huge fan of. They do great material that can get people excited as well. So as far as other things go, that's a great way to promote and allow other essentially news agencies, I suppose you could call me something like that. We can, with that material, as long as we've got permission to do so, we can take that material and we can present it to the world on all of our channels, and we can get behind it and talk about this thing, generate a lot of excitement. And I recently did a little thing about Gilmore Space. Actually, it was interesting that you guys talked about that just before. It's really great to be able to see some footage of some engine tests and things like this that we saw the other week with Gilmore Space. So the only advice I'd give to any Australian projects going on in this area is, just take great footage, give us the material to work with and help us promote it with you. Like it's so incredibly exciting. But back to back to Bob and Doug here. This is them getting ready to do the return after the mission was complete, and they're all strapped in. They re-enter the atmosphere. They come down. The drogue chutes come out. The parachutes come out, and they end up splashing down just beautifully there. It's just so amazing to see. Even the footage here of them being picked up in the Gulf of Mexico, or the recovery operations, incredible to see just this success. And it was just massive. The traffic around this was just colossal. And even after after coming down, they decided they would come and do this live event. So here's Bob and Doug just sitting there after spending a few months in space. Their bones, muscles are just probably just killing them at this point. And they're just here answering questions and just being just generally awesome people, right? It's something that you don't often see. Usually they're, funneled away. They sort of get put in, a lot of the time in isolation quite quickly. And it was just great to see them talk. If anyone that hasn't seen this presentation, highly advise going and watching it, because some of the stuff that was said here just blew my mind. Again, the reason why this is such a big deal, firstly, it's SpaceX's very first launch with crew. So this was a hairy one in a lot of people's minds. If for some reason something went wrong, what would happen with SpaceX? Would they be, so there was always that hanging over our head in the back of our mind, I guess, even though we were, reasonably certain everything was going to be fine. But, it's, and obviously all this is going on while there's a pandemic, so you couldn't have all of this stuff happening as it normally would. Normally you'd have these huge crowds there gathered around to come and watch these events take place and watch the launch take place. And Jim Bridenstine here gave just one of the best speeches, and it was a real appeal to Congress. They've got some budgetary plans asking for some of the biggest amount of funding since the Apollo programs, all this sort of thing. So the push and the excitement around being able to send astronauts to space again from the US is just something that we haven't seen for a long time. I mean, don't forget, and a lot of people don't realize this when I talk about it. They haven't had the ability at all to send humans into space since the shuttle back in 2011 retired. And Elon Musk here, talking about just this is talking about how humbling it is to be able to get to this point. They were working on this project for 18 years before it got to this mission. And the huge team behind SpaceX that we see there is always mind-boggling. Elon Musk with the various little flaws he's got, you can't doubt the passion behind what he wants to do. And of course, then on the back of that, we've got Crew One. So Crew One here, we've got the guys. That's just a quick little snapshot that we see there of the next crew. These guys are going up in October. It's going to be 4 this time, not 2. So here's the 4 here for Crew One, and this I really can't wait for. This is extremely exciting. We've got Shannon Walker there. She has been, she has flown before. I think she's recently gone, just from memory, on a Soyuz. She's done 163 days in space. Victor Glover hasn't been up before. I don't think. He's a US Navy commander from memory. We got Michael Hopkins. I think he flew 2013, something like that. And then Suichi Noguchi, who I've probably just massacred that name, but another wonderful dude. And yeah, like I say, just a quick shot there from the very last shuttle mission way back in 2011. America just hasn't had any capability since then to send anyone up. That's a long time, and it's a long time to be dependent on Russian Soyuz to do this, just in case of any tensions that can arise very quickly. Part of Crew 2, which is coming up, is also exciting. That's supposed to happen, I believe, in spring next year, sometime US spring next year, I believe, is when it's sort of tasked to take off. And again, a great crew of 4 that's going to be going on that one. It's just incredible how fast this stuff's all occurring when there's been such minimal activity. So these are the 4 crew that are going to be jumping up on Crew 2. There's Catherine MacArthur, who we saw a minute ago. I'll just skim back here a little. Catherine MacArthur's actually, or Megan MacArthur, I think she's more commonly known. That's Bob Behnken's other half. So, what a great partnership that is. Just being able to, so, and we've got Shane Kimbrough, we've got Thomas Pesquet, and Akihiko Hashide, who was from JAXA there. Another incredible crew that's going to be going up there. So it's all extremely exciting, and we just can't wait to see what happens in the future here with Crew 1 and Crew 2. Now that obviously Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley's back safe, and have run all the tests they needed to run with the demo mission. The future, I think, is bright. I get the question obviously a lot that how quick can they turn these vessels around? This is Crew 1 that was being worked on. This is actually back in April. Some of the shots there. So yeah, that's Crew Dragon, and why we think that's so wonderful. I can only talk about Crew Dragon all day. There's so many facts and things. But to move on, we'll head to the other amazing things going on SpaceX wise in Boca Chica. Now, Boca Chica has been just so fun to watch over the last year. So they've had all these mishaps. So this, just to explain for those people that aren't following this, right? This tank here, this test tank, is 9 meters wide. That is not a small thing. And we'll sort of see shots of people in scale of it here soon. But you can imagine this thing. They're doing this huge pressure test. This is Starship's test tank serial number 3. So all these serial numbers they're going through, and we've gone through quite a few. And during a test, this thing just folds in half. It just folds in half, crumples down, explodes. The top of this thing's filled with liquid nitrogen, super cold stuff, and the whole thing just crumples over, and that's the end of that vessel. Seeing these things happen in real time, and we've got people live streaming this. This is stuff that there's Lab Padre, there's this Boca Chica gal. Oh, that's another one there. So these missions. Or these test tanks, they don't intend for these things to happen. They would like them to test out well, but they're fully open and expecting that there could be issues. So this was the big one, right? This was SN4, and this had just a huge explosion. What actually happened with this one was that there was a release issue. So this is fueled with liquid oxygen, liquid methane, and just to go back here again, and when there was actually a leak, you saw it just before the explosion there, a leak that actually started just, let me just see if I can snap it. Oh, not quite. Right there. So here you can kind of see, there's been a rupture in one of the lines that's feeding the tank. They tried to do a quick disconnect. It didn't work properly. It didn't actually disconnect at all, which was bad. So all this liquid methane, liquid oxygen pouring out of this thing. You got a huge flame, a huge flare stack on the other side. We don't know if that had anything to do with the actual ignition source, but regardless, we think it was actually ignited underneath because things are hot under here. This was just after a static fire, so they've tested this Raptor engine, which is one of the most advanced engines of the world. They're trying to increase the functionality of that, but all of a sudden the entire thing explodes quite energetically. Quite energetically. You can go and look at replays of this footage. They had this huge thing here. This is a mass simulator on top of the Starship, and this gives you an idea of scale. Here's the people, right? This thing's 9 meters wide. It's freaking huge. And this mass simulator there is roughly, it's got 2 huge steel rolls in it, each of them being about 10 tons. So we think that this mass simulator on the top, this part here that they've mounted on top there, is roughly 23 tons. So when we have a look at what happens from another angle, so this is just them putting it on, making sure it's secure. And the reason they've got this, by the way, is so that when they do a flight, it just, because there's this extra mass up the top, it just adds a bit of stability to the flight, because, you know, this is all very, very much in its, you know, test phase. And here we can see that mass simulator being launched, 25 tons being launched up into the air. That is a big explosion. So anyway, onto the SN5. So the SN5 is the first successful full-scale flight. And of course, just to explain a different flight, this little guy down here was Starhopper. So this guy did a hop last year at 150 meters as well. That was all successful, but this was made out of super strong or super thick steel to try to make sure that, you know, this test would go okay. So that was massively heavy. In fact, Starhopper there is more than likely heavier than this, the full scale ship. So anyway, this is the full scale Starship that actually flew. I don't know, I could probably turn the volume up here. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. If you can hear it, great. I'm not sure if you can. But, you know, here's this massive tower just coming up on the side, one engine on this, and the engine itself is actually offset. So it's got the capability to have 3 engines under there at the moment, and they've got one single offset engine. So it's got to tilt this way to try to tilt it so that it's not going to topple over. So, you know, it's got these little baby legs that pop out underneath, and you know, it's just bizarre to think that this huge thing has just done this little test flight. One Raptor engine just touches down beautifully. You know, a couple of the legs get a little bit crushed, and there you go. Down it comes, touches down beautifully, and there it is, just on the pad. So it's just incredible to see the future of what this thing's going to be. Obviously, the idea is that this is going to evolve into this massive thing with air surfaces and things so it can control its re-entry. There's a lot of people still skeptical about this. I mean, there's to do all the thing it needs to do, such as refueling and this sort of thing. The idea is to launch this thing into space with quite a large payload, refuel it repeatedly until it's full, and then send it off to the moon or to Mars and that sort of thing. And there is just a great shot, a drone shot of this thing in the sky. So just incredible stuff there. And, you know, since then, we've now got SN6. So this is the next version. It's had a pressure test already, and just today, I haven't even had time to record it or talk about it yet. Just today, it's had its first static fire. I think it's probably the only static fire it needs to do. So that has all happened. This is going to be apparently doing another flight, possibly at the end of this week, is the current road closures that are going on at the moment. Obviously, now the idea, and just to explain a little, you sort of see this yellow machine here. This actually, initially before they go to launch one of these huge beasts or even test a Raptor engine, what they do is they put up this essentially, it's a hydraulic ram, right? So it pushes up on this thrust puck area where the engines are going to be mounted and simulates the thrust of those potentially 3 engines, or in this case maybe just the one at the moment, because as far as we know, there's only going to be one Raptor again on this, almost repeating that SN5 launch. So after that was successful, they pulled this ram structure away and then mounted the engine. That there is the Raptor engine. I'll just go back to that. Actually, it's a beautiful shot of it. That there is the Raptor engine. The full flow stage combustion cycle engine, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's incredibly advanced. Only the Raptor here is the only engine of this type that's ever flown. The Russians did manage to make one, but it never really flew, never got off the ground. They had a lot of issues with stability of it. This is now up to, I believe, it's probably up to its 40-something serial number version. So this is serial number 29. So there's 29 of these babies either sitting around or exploded, or have had tests run on it, and they're well up above serial number 40. And so serial number 40 just goes to show how quickly they're making these. They're probably making roughly one a week or even more. at this stage. So, you know, but the exciting thing is we've just noticed the other day, unless these dates have changed, I haven't had time to catch up on it today, I must say, things evolve so darn quickly, it's hard to really know everything that's happening. But what we see at the moment is that the primary date here for the flight is August 28th, between 8 a.m. 8 p.m. local time in Texas. So, you know, that's very exciting. And that's happened much more rapidly than what it did with SN5. And, you know, we obviously hope to see this again very soon. It's really quite astounding. But and just to quickly reiterate that point there, this is... that there is the current road closure and, you know, statement there saying that it's the SN6 hop. So it's not just a date, that could be another static fire. They're saying there that it's the hop. So unless something changes, that's going to be pretty exciting. So if you love this stuff, you want to sort of see what's going on, hook into the live streams. There's live streams from Lad Padre and Boga Chica Gal, from NASA Spaceflight, just these wonderful people that are out there capturing this stuff live. It just blows our mind that we're able to see all this stuff happen. And of course, SpaceX will release their own versions of these, you know, these bits of footage as well. But on top of that, I think it's worth talking about other people that are also on board doing amazing things. So just to get back to myself a little and how I've structured the channel, one thing that has been amazing to me, and it's not just me, it's other YouTubers that are following the same stuff. There's a number of us all following these things and making content. If a few of us can get together and say, look, you know, let's all promote RGV Aerial here. Let's see if we can get people to sign up and help support that channel. And then, you know, we'll all have more to talk about. We'll all have more footage. So collectively, we have managed to get quite a large following for RGV Aerial over the last couple of months, enough so that he can now take flights every week, and he's grabbing shots of the construction site from the air, being able to go and see, you know, we're getting these shots weekly, and there's no way that would be possible without what we're doing to promote him. You know, if it's just one guy trying to get his name out there on Twitter, there's just no way. So it's a win-win. We get to have great footage, great imagery. We get to partner with him, help support him, and also get to talk about this amazing stuff and see it from all sorts of different angles. But just to talk about what else is going on with Starship development at the moment, we have got Starship serial number 1. Now, serial number 1 is another test tank. I'm not 100% sure what they need to find out with this. It's made out of, this isn't it actually, this is an earlier one, and this is just showing previous versions of the test tanks. So this serial number SN7.1 is going to be testing some newer sort of technology with the thrust. That's actually a close-up there of the thrust park area. So the Raptor engines are actually mounted to this thing. So when that hydraulic ram I was talking about earlier is you know, doing those tests, it's pushing up against this thing that needs to support a huge amount of thrust. Huge amount of thrust. I mean, you're talking about just ridiculous. As soon as you multiply that by 3 Raptor engines, you talk about ridiculous pressures on that whole thing. So they need to make sure it's not just going to buckle or, you know, flip out or something like that. And they're going to be doing some more tests with this 7.1. That's just one of the tanks. But what's currently being built is the SN8. Now, that's the one we're really excited about, because the SN8 is going to, we believe, haven't got 100% confirmation on these things, I understand, but we can see all the components coming together. We know roughly what's going on there. And here inside this huge mid-bay, this is the SN5 that has flown. That's the one we saw earlier. And this one here is the SN8 being built up, and all the components for the SN8 are being constructed here. And again, talking about collaboration with wonderful people, Brendan here making these diagrams. He's taking, you know, he's studying these images, all this live stream data, trying to figure out, what that goes with that. We've seen that little label that says SN8 on that before, so we know that goes there. Putting all the pieces together like a jigsaw to try to figure out, okay, what is it that we're likely to see being built up here? So we get these wonderful diagrams that we can talk about where we're saying, right, well, here's the main core body. It's all here. It's all together. On top of that's the nose cone and the fairing section. We know that the thrust puck's going to get flipped underneath and put underneath here. You know, we've got aero surfaces from RGB aerial photography that's going to be mounted on the side of this thing, we think. So, you know, there's a bit of speculation there, but we think it's fairly accurate. You know, we don't get too much stuff wrong. Sometimes we're proven wrong. It just depends. So yes, that's the next one to watch. Serial number 8. That's going to be really exciting because that's going to take much larger flights. So at the moment, we've got this 150-meter hop. SN6 may go higher. We don't know yet. We actually don't know the altitude. We're only assuming that it's probably going to repeat a lower altitude flight just because it's only got the one Raptor engine. But that's going to be exciting to see. And, you know, whereas SN8, that's going to have 3 Raptor engines on it. As far as we know, it's going to have these aero surfaces. And what it's supposed to do is this belly flop maneuver that comes down. In fact, if I just ditch this for a second, this goes back to a presentation that Elon Musk did a year ago now, basically. And this is kind of a simulation of how it's, you know, it's going to come in, it's going to remove all of its velocity, and then it's going to sort of belly flop down with these aero surfaces to control it. And then right at the end, it's going to essentially come and flip over. So that's sort of coming down through the higher atmosphere, slowing down as much as possible without using any sort of propulsion. And then if we sort of come down to you know, this is Elon Musk a year ago standing in front of the Mark 1, which is before any of the serial numbers existed. So the Mark 1 never flew. That had an explosion of its own. In fact, it's still got the large nose cone there sitting off, you know, just as an ornament essentially. But the other half of that is this flip over. So it comes down. It needs to do this very very hard flip with the engines, comes down, and then, you know, slowly touches down. It's got the capability to hover if it needs to, and everything like that. So that's kind of what it needs to do. So quite an amazing sort of goal that they've got there, and that goal is one of those things that I think is, you know, something that there's still a lot of people that don't believe that it's possible that this thing can hold together and that sort of thing. One thing I've learned over the last few years is don't doubt Elon Musk. Like people said, no, you can't land rockets. They've landed rockets many times. It's just routine now. You know, things like my desktop background there, two boosters landing side by side. That stuff is always astounding to come back and realize that this is actually possible now. So, you know, people can doubt him as much as they like. Until he gives up, I'm going to believe that this stuff's possible. So, yeah. And then on top of all this, right, we've got serial number 9. So serial number 8's being constructed. Serial number 9's already rolling out. So it's yet another version that's going to do higher flights. And, you know, we get to witness all of this stuff. And, you know, again, you know, we get these little hints, or Brendan gets these little hints from the labels. You know, somebody would just scribble on it, serial number 9. And then you've got all these wonderful little components that we see, just beautiful imagery of. This is a thrust, this is a downcomer. So what this does is this feeds the liquid methane from the top tank right down. Well, there's actually a header tank that sits on top of that, which is all to do with landing. I won't go into too much detail there, but that feeds the liquid methane down through the liquid oxygen tank, and that all then hooks up to the engine. So you got the liquid methane, liquid oxygen, all you know, connecting in at that thrust puck structure where all these engines are mounted, and a new thrust puck structure there, you can sort of see it inverted. So it's kind of got this inverted roll. You know, if you imagine the bottom piping all getting hooked up to these various connections to these Raptor engines, which are just putting out ridiculous amounts of thrust. And you know, things like the little, you know, these are the little legs that are going to go on one of these Starship versions. But yeah, and on top of this, like on top of all that development, of course, we've got the incredible, you know, just the incredible movement around the site. They're building so much so fast. So this is the mid bay, what they call the mid bay now. That is very tall. You can sort of see these are very large cranes, vehicles down here. And they're building a much bigger one that's got the capability to have essentially a super heavy booster. So at the moment, we're just looking at the Starship. And the Super Heavy booster is actually much larger. Again, that goes underneath the Starship. But, first things first, need to get the Starship organised and sorted. So that's the Starship there. And, again, RGV aerial, taking this beautiful footage from the air. So this is actually only a few days old. And, on top of that, again, in terms of collaboration, Corey here is a 3D artist that's sort of recently, come out doing just wonderful simulations. And this is what he sees and what we believe is fairly realistic of what we're going to see with something like the SN8. So it's going to curve over here, come down, use those aerodynamic surfaces on the nose to come and do this, flip around, and just touch down here at the site. Now, regardless of what happens, it's either going to succeed or fail. If it fails, it's going to be a very spectacular failure. And if it succeeds, it's going to be obviously even more incredible. And, other amazing artists, such as Neopork here is the code name, just making these beautiful detailed renders, breakups of how it's all going to be, from the internals, how it looks. Just unreal amounts of time that are spent by all these people, and we can help support them by promoting them. And like I've said in my video there, support, go to Patreon, support what they're doing, and you'll be amazed. And this is actually a shot of the Raptor engine. So just the other day, Elon Musk mentioned that it's just reached 330 bar of pressure, which was basically the goal. In fact, I think it's actually above the goal. It's probably more of a safety margin goal. Do they have the extra 10% that they need? And you can, sort of see all the test details there to figure out what sort of pressures they've got. For those that are, like us, we measure a lot of this sort of stuff by pounds per square inch. That's 4,700 pounds per square inch of very, very rapid, hot moving exhaust coming out of there. So that is astounding. And, other launch animations and things like that. So this is actually a simulation of a Super Heavy booster. So just to put it into perspective, you saw the size of that SN5 Starship. So the Starship, if we actually have a look at this here, the Starship's only this top part. The Super Heavy booster it's going to be stacked on is going to have around 31 of these Raptor engines pushing this huge beast into the atmosphere before it comes back down to land. And that's a pretty astounding thing when you think about it, what they're trying to do there. This is a much bigger, more powerful rocket than the Saturn V, and it's aimed to be 100% reusable. So the idea is that it launches, the massive booster comes back down and lands, the Starship takes the payload to orbit and then re-enters doing this belly flop maneuver, comes down, touches down, off they go again. They could maybe launch it a few times a day is what the ultimate goal is, I believe. So these are incredibly ambitious goals. If you can lower the cost of mass to orbit to that degree, which, Elon Musk says a lot of things, some of them you think are probably a little over optimistic, but if you can lower the cost of mass to orbit by orders of magnitude, which is what the estimate there is, you can do some pretty astounding stuff. Very astounding stuff, actually. And I'll just have a look at how I'm going for time because once I get started, Michael, and Peter, that's the end of me. So we've been going for a fair while. Starlink is another thing I'll just quickly talk about. Starlink is an incredible project of its own. And we've seen this play out week after week. They're launching 60 of these at a time. Most of the time, they're sometimes doing rideshare missions. These missions blow our mind. And what's even more amazing more recently, if I skim through here, is how they actually put all of these into an orbit. And huge respect to Elias for making this simulation. So he gets all the publicly available satellite data and plots it all here and actually shows how all of these things are actually processing due to their angle, due to their inclination. They process slowly, and then they can use altitude to actually accelerate or decelerate the rate of that precession to the point where they can actually launch 60 and split them up into blocks of 20 into different orbital planes, which blows my mind. And just to, I guess, finalize a few quick things, Elon Musk shared a fairing catch there by one of the fairing catch ships. So not only are they landing the boosters, they're frequently catching the fairings and retrieving them out of the ocean. You know, they're doing these ride-share missions as well, so they can help fund this by putting a few small payloads on board. You know, they've taken criticism to heart with some of the issues with reflectivity. So they've got these black shades that sort of pop out to reduce reflectivity and that sort of thing on the more recent satellites. And these things are just going out all the time. But one of the more astounding things, I think, is that this booster here, which launched the last Starlink, that's booster 1049, B1049. That is the first time that a booster has flown and landed six times in a row. So this has been launched and landed on a drone ship and returned 6 times. That's a record so far. They're aiming for 10. So this could be the first booster to fly 7 times. It could fly 8. We never really know. So this stuff just astounds me every week. There's all this material to talk about, and I'll just take a quick break because I've been banging on now for quite a while. So feel free to ask some questions. Hopefully, I haven't muted myself.
Thanks, Marcus. That's brilliant. What we've got going, for people that may or may not know, we've got a Slido page which we're using to manage questions. So we've got a few here. So if you like, I'll try to filter those and ask them of you, and then if you could just go ahead and answer back. So
Yeah.
All right. So where are we? Okay. There are a number of SpaceX Starlink terminals in the US for beta testing with posted ping times. Does anyone know if there are any terminals in Australia yet?
It's a great question. It's a very great question, actually. Just as one example, we happen to be quite well placed here in Tasmania, and we're quite well placed to be on the opposite side of a lot of these orbits. They're doing tests over the northern United States and Canada, and we just happen to be on the other side of that orbit just. So I was always kind of hoping. I've actually signed up, and actually if anybody would like to sign up, you can jump onto starlink.com, put your address in, and hopefully we'll get notified. I haven't received anything yet. I would love to be able to test out Starlink as a service. Towards the end of the video there, I was just going to talk a little bit about that, but I've kind of used up enough time already. But more recently, what's happened is that there's sort of been a little bit of leaked information. So this is all very secret. You know, you've got to sign, non-disclosure agreements and that sort of stuff. And yet what's actually happened is some stats have leaked out. So they're talking at the moment, and just keep in mind, of course, that this has not yet, it's not yet played out. If I just, I am sharing my screen, aren't I? Yeah. So, you know, we're talking here about speeds currently between 11 megabits to 60 megabits per second. Now, it may not seem hugely quick if you're on a fibre connection like I am right here. Very lucky. We've got NBN straight to the home. Many places in Australia don't. They're still running, fibre to the node and things like this. But this isn't who it's targeted for. Starlink is targeted for people that have just got terrible internet coverage and they just don't have any better offering. So you're talking about those in the more rural areas, people that, farms and these sorts of places, they just haven't been, they can't run fibre optic up some of these places. So the reason why this is amazing is because you've just got this little satellite dish, this little dish here. If you can call it a dish, it almost looks like a pancake. And all you have to do is basically point it at the sky. And this will be anywhere in the world, almost anywhere in the world. Point it at the sky and you can have a connection. So you could presumably mount this thing on your boat, or you could have it on a motorhome or something like that. Point it at the sky and you're connected, and connected with, frankly, I mean, if you can get anything in between here, 30 megabits a second is like, it's not super fast, but it's also enough to do almost, you can stream multiple streams of that. It's still incredibly good. I could get by with that connection speed, even doing what I do. Preliminary upload speeds there. I believe they're very early on. I reckon they'll get much quicker because the network's only half deployed, right? So there's going to be multiple of these things overhead at any one time. You know, they'll figure out which one's under more load. And as far as I understand at the moment, they just bounce a signal up. So you signal up, and it just comes down again to a nearest station that can actually pump the data out. So it's fairly quick. And the reason why it's got a lot of people excited, as well as probably an equal number of people frustrated, which I'll talk about in a second, is because they're very low altitude. If you've got satellite internet before Starlink, satellite internet's generally been at geostationary altitudes. So you're talking way out there. It's latency's quite a few hundred milliseconds and things like that to make that trip. These are orbiting up around 550 kilometers, I believe, between, and they're going to have some that are even closer, I think, up around 300 or so. So there's going to be this big mesh of these things. So latency tests there already coming back 31 to 94 milliseconds. Some even claiming even lower at 20 to 21, which is what Elon Musk was saying was the goal. So yeah, that there is pretty astounding stuff.
All right, Marcus, we've got quite a few questions, so we'll maybe try to zoom through them fairly quickly. Do you know anything about SpaceX in Darwin? This is a question from Angelo.
No, I don't.
I don't either.
No. I'm actually trying to find out more about SpaceX in Tasmania, because I know that there is SpaceX-related stuff down here. It's all very secret. I'm not allowed to really know about it. So
there you go. Someone asked the question, I already know the answer to that. Are they going to reuse the crew demo capsule Endeavour? I believe that's going to be on the Crew 2 mission, isn't it? Not the next mission, the mission after.
As far as I'm aware at the moment, what they're going to be doing is not reusing them at all, except for cargo missions. So the idea is that after these come back, they can be refurbished, all the seats and things taken out, all the unnecessary components taken out, and then they're going to use those for cargo resupply. So for anyone that's followed...
that was the early plan, Marcus, but I do believe I recall that they've made a decision that they're going to reuse it, because I think that the wife of one of the crew members was going to be on board that spacecraft like 2 missions away.
I think that'll be a future one.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a future one. I know Crew 1 is definitely a brand new capsule. I'm pretty certain that Crew 2 is a brand new capsule as well. But they have talked, and I think they've probably made it official that they do plan to reuse them. I'm not sure how concrete that is at this stage. We're sort of waiting to know. I think it's more of a submission sort of request that they would like to do this. There's probably still some negotiation going through. I'm not sure if that's 100% official or not, but I know that they are intending on trying to do that. But yeah, regardless, it's going to be exciting to see them go up just with the crew, just with the cargo returns, because they're kind of cool by themselves. You just load the things full of cargo, send them up, fully autonomous. So.
Sure. All right, this is probably not specific SpaceX, but you might have an opinion on it. If Joe Biden is successful in November, what do you think the chances of his administration holding on to Jim Bridenstine as administrator?
I've got no idea, actually. I don't follow American politics a great deal, but what I will say, I was very skeptical of Jim Bridenstine when he was first announced. I sort of thought, he just doesn't have the skills, doesn't do this. But I have been pleasantly surprised by that. I think Jim is just incredible for the role he's got. He's just done a fantastic job. And at the moment, current administrations and whatnot, if additional funding is made to really achieve these goals of landing on the moon within 4 years, still a bit skeptical of that. It's probably almost 3 years now. That's a huge effort, and it's going to take huge resources. And if they don't have funding, there's no way that that's going to happen via NASA. Could it happen with SpaceX? I don't know. Starship's got a long way to go before it can really even think about, doing some lunar landings or something like that. Let's get to orbit first and that sort of thing, or at least do some of these 20-kilometer flight tests with them landing. So it's going to be interesting to see. Personal opinion, I think that by the time SLS gets off the ground, we may be quite close to that 4 year. We'll see. They're definitely pushing a lot harder now. So 12 months ago, I would have said there's no way. But, you know, there's a lot going on with SLS right now. And there's certainly a lot more push to probably try to compete against space. Not compete against them, but to start to catch up to the speed that they're developing things at. Because,
for those interested in politics, next month's meeting, the September meeting, we're going to have a bit of a preview of the US election with regard to space politics and the Democrat and Republican policies and statements up to that date. So hopefully we'll get a reasonable idea of what either one of the candidates might do if they get elected. So watch this space. Another question from Rob Speed. SpaceX have painted a few satellites dark in order to counter the effect on astronomy. How has that gone? And can we see any decent photographs without trails on? I guess if there's no trails, we might see any photo in the photographs. But anyway,
that's exactly right. Well, I mean, these new visors, because I did do a couple of tests with it's more of a paint sort of coating of certain areas that were specifically, quite reflective. Certain components are reflective, some aren't. The thing that has really got people upset is that when they're in their orbit raising maneuver, which is, for those first few months, they basically sort of lie down flat with these huge solar panels, basically just like a mirror reflecting back at the ground. So certain angle of sun just hits and it just is bright as anything. But after they get to their operational altitude, they sort of flip up vertically and they're orientated correctly. And, you never hear many people complain of, oh, hang on, there's Starlink all over the place. They don't really see them now that most of them are operational. It's only after there's a launch and then somebody will capture a big string of them and Twitter and the internet will go crazy about how they're going to ruin astronomy and that sort of thing. And look, that stuff's a legitimate concern.
I remember a few years ago when the ISS had one of their big solar panels going to be installed, and someone in the US Senate got up and it was in Australia and complained about how it's going to ruin the night sky for the generations ahead.
Yeah.
It's going to be so bright. It's going to be brighter than the moon.
That's right. And look, these things are pretty. They come and go. These news stories, like every time some Starlink mission happens to be orbiting just at the right inclination and the right plane to cause a lot of reflection, the internet just goes crazy. All
right, we'll keep moving, Marcus, because we do have a lot of questions here.
Sure.
What's your day job? Someone asked.
My day job? I'm actually a web developer. I'm a programmer, so I do a lot of that kind of work. I've been doing that for a number of years. So I'm lucky enough at the moment to be earning enough revenue from some of the revenue streams from this gig that I'm doing to drop back. So I'm doing a few days a week, and still really loving that stuff. It's probably healthy, I think, to do something other than sit here on a screen doing video editing and stuff. I might go a little peculiar. So self-isolation hasn't really been a big stretch for you, eh? It hasn't really, because I'm usually pretty isolated. I'm usually sitting here, not moving very far.
Yeah. Okay, we've got another question from Angela. How much do you know about the refurbishment taking on Falcon 9 rockets for relaunch, particularly after they've had 5 or 6 launches? Any idea?
Yeah. I know that the goal, and I don't know, it hasn't really been disclosed a great deal unless I just haven't spotted it. I don't think they have to do too much work. I mean, there's obvious, they do checks and make sure that everything's kind of looking clean, and it's more inspections, I imagine, than anything. They've got to manually flip these legs up and get it all sort of refixed up. But my understanding is they don't need to do a huge refurbishment on the booster until after 10 flights. So none of them have got that far yet to sort of know what level of refurbishment they're talking about. But frankly, after they've flown 10 times, that's a pretty good record right there. Even if they could only fly them 10 times, that's great. That I think Elon Musk at one point said after the 3rd or 4th flight, it's kind of break even. There is extra cost in recovery and all this sort of stuff, but after 4 flights, I think it was kind of break even. So everything after that 3rd or 4th flight is bonus. These Block 5 boosters, which is what they're currently on and have been on for a while, are incredibly reliable. They've only lost a few of them over the last year or so just because they're really pushing the boundaries with these Starlink launches. They're incredibly heavy, and they leave very little fuel left in the booster. So they've had a couple of mishaps, but it's purely, I think, just because they're really pushing the boundaries there.
No worries. All right, we're going to just to sort of keep on track to a reasonable extent. We're just going to do 3 more questions, and then maybe after we've got the next little section, we'll open the questions back after people still want to. So Stephen Humble asks, it's not clear if these current Starlink sats have inter-satellite links. Is there any news on this? So I guess, do they link with each other at all?
Yeah, the original intention was that they would indeed have some sort of laser links and that sort of thing. I don't believe any of these do. I haven't seen any news of that. I wouldn't mind betting that the initial rollout will be, just your normal up, down ground links. And I wouldn't be surprised if then another layer, sort of maybe even lower down, becomes interconnected that way. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything about it for a long time. I know that was the intention. I don't know if they've just decided, well, look, maybe it's just best to zigzag up and down infrastructure-wise. Maybe that's just as good, because all it has to do is get to the nearest ground point. So if you're, I guess the only thing is if you right in the middle of the ocean or some place where there's no ground stations for like hundreds of kilometres, then you've got a problem. But for the majority of the world, there'll be a ground station quite nearby. It might be 150 kilometres or 500 kilometres away, but that's a shot up and back down to that ground station is really all you need. It's only if you're trying to cross continents over the ocean that you've got a bit of an issue there. But I mean, I've seen a number of mock-ups of if you've got a few oil platforms throughout the ocean, you just mount these ground stations on them, and it's just this kind of little up-down zigzag that they can do there. It might not be quite as fast as up and straight over with some laser links, but still pretty effective. And then maybe the next version will go into doing this more interconnected method that they talked about there with lasers.
Sure. Okay, 2 more questions. Would you know if Elon Musk is planning another Falcon Heavy launch? I believe it's later this year, isn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely more on the cards. There's even newer news where they're looking at these new contracts where they're actually going to have a big extended fairing. So it's going to be like 1.5 times the size. I forget the measurements of it now, but that's going to take some interesting development, because the size of the fairings have always been the same right through the Falcon 9 launches, or at least the later ones. So yeah, having an extended fairing lets them launch more mass, obviously, because the Falcon Heavy, it's incredibly powerful, but the size of the fairing there isn't really very large, and there's certainly still benefits over the Delta 4 or something like that. It's just got some added extras that the Falcon Heavy can't do. So it's going to be interesting to see how that development goes.
Our last question, and I assume this speaks of the Starship. What fuels are used?
For the Starship, it's using liquid methane, liquid oxygen. The reason it's using the liquid methane is because it can be synthesized on Mars. So the ultimate goal of Starship is to land on Mars and populate Mars. So that the liquid methane is very important for that degree. They use this Sabatier process to essentially suck carbon out of the air and synthesize liquid methane out of it. So I believe. That's always been the intention, I think. But if it's the Falcon 9 we're talking about, that runs on kerosene and liquid oxygen. So yeah, very different. Obviously, the kerosene's much dirtier fuel. You have a lot more exhaust. The liquid methane burns very clean, as you see from that 150-meter hop we looked at before. You just see this blue flame.
Beautiful. All right, Marcus, that was absolutely excellent. Thank you so much for that. This is Marcus' first time here, and we've really appreciated it. We could talk all night, but we've got to...
I was going to say, I've just banged on for almost an hour.
It's been perfect. It's been great. So it's been good. All right, I'm going to grab the screen back, and we're going to finish off with just a bit of other global news, non-SpaceX. So we've covered the gamut of everything.
Lovely.
I think I'm sharing. Is that right? I'm sharing. Yes, I am. Go back over here and do that thing there. Right. Michael or someone, can you see my screen here? Somebody?
Yep, you can see it.
Yep, we can see it. We can see
All right,
it.
fantastic. Okay, so we've got a global space roundup for you now. It's not comprehensive, doesn't have everything. It's a bit of a snack of different things around the planet, hopefully, and you might find it a bit of interest. So, sort of local news, actually. Rocket Lab, New Zealand, have employed Mike Griffin, who's a former NASA administrator. He stepped down as Under Secretary of Defence back in July and has now joined the board of directors at Rocket Lab. So getting some recognition there. This came a month after he resigned from NASA. His last day was July 10. While he was at NASA, he oversaw the development of the Constellation program and initiated the Commercial Orbital True Transport Services program, which is basically a precursor to the Commercial Crew. So back in industry, he was an executive of Orbital Science Corporation during the 90s. He also led InQtel, a venture capital arm of the intelligence community. Griffith's addition to the board comes as they're seeking to grow more government business. Obviously, connections, that's what it's all about, right? So they have won contracts with US Space Force, DARPA, NASA, and the NRO. So good move there. Try to get yourself into a bit of business in Washington. You've got to know the right people, right? We've all seen not Game of Thrones. We've all seen The West Wing and House of Cards. Arecibo dish down in, where is it? Down in Spain. Argentina.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, sorry. So it's had some damage. A cable that suspends the observing platform above the 305-metre dish broke on August 10. It's a section of the cable, not the platform itself, but the section of the cable fell about 30 metres and caused caused a gas about 30 metres long. It also damaged the platform in some way. So the platform 7.5 centimetres in diameter, quite heavy. I think it weighs about 30 kilograms per metre. So and there's 200 metres of cable that fell onto the dish. So they're still determining the full extent of the damage, the cost, and the schedule that's going to take. So here's some of the damage looking from underneath. The upper picture you can see a little bit of a gash there. So it's not the whole thing, but it's a reasonable chunk of it. So not a good thing there. US Space Force. They released their first doctrine defining space power. So the newest military service published the space power document, the US Space Force Space Capstone publication. It's basically the first articulation of space power as a separate and distinct form of military power. And so this is basically from the US Space Force press release. So I'll just paraphrase what they've said in that document, in that press release. While existing joint and service documents provided space-related doctrine, they were authored when space was still regarded as a benign domain, not a war domain. The new capstone publication tailored to present the reality our adversaries have made space a warfaring domain. So I don't know if you've seen Space Force on TV. Anyway. So this is a document here. You can download it and have a look at it yourself. The US Space Force hosted a summit back in February, and they actually got representatives from Australia, Canada, UK, etc., to offer additional recommendations. I wonder what the Australian contribution was. Probably have a pub at the headquarters. So the US Space Force defends the nation's interest in the space domain and will leverage the strategic foundation of the Space Capstone publication. So there we go. All right, some SLS news. It moves close to the hot fire or green run test. So the green run test campaign for the SLS core stage will culminate in two critical tests that will demonstrate the real world performance of a large and complicated vehicle. And the last two of these, so they've already done 6 of these test milestones. So the last 2 leading up to the 8th one at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. We'll load it up with cryogenic propellants, basically a wet dress rehearsal, and then finally running through the stage propulsion through a full mission cycle. So they're going to be so the 2 tests 10-minute long terminal countdown leading up to an 8-minute firing of the stage in the stand. Now here's the SLS stage being listed into that stand. So this is the wet dress rehearsal. Basically they'll load all the cryogenic fuels and all the loading cycles and all the leak checks and the major systems checks of the system. Then the hot fire test, the green one, will be 8 minutes. So it'll take the 4 engines to empty the stage of propellant. The stage will be commanded through different test sequences, gimbaling and that kind of stuff as well. As during the wet dress rehearsal, 30 seconds of the countdown, the stage controller will hand over authority to the vehicle 3 core stage computers. So the onboard computers will be running that. So they're talking about the hot fire run happening in October. So let's hope that happens. So that's the test stand there. That was actually used, it's been modified slightly for the Apollo missions. So this is the NASA sort of checklist of the different stages that they've undergone with relating to getting up to the green run. So that they've done the 4. I think, as I say, they've done the 5 and 6 now. This graphic's a little bit out of date. So the last 7 and 8 are the ones they're looking to achieve. So watch this space. So this is that same stand back in the Apollo era when they were doing the first stage, the S1C Saturn V stages. And this is the first run of it back in 1967. So it should be pretty spectacular to see. We'll just have a little bit of it. So that's obviously a Saturn V first stage with the 5 F1 engines, but hopefully we'll see something like that. Now, big news on the space station. It's leaking. And they've got their best astronaut on the case. So the ISS crew spent the weekend testing for a cabin leak. The air may be leaking in the International Space Station, so the astronauts and 2 cosmonauts moved into the Russian segment for last weekend to test where the problem could be. So this is a graphic of the station. The left-hand side is the Russian segment, right-hand side is the US segment. So, so the leak's still within the specifications and there's no danger or any of that at this stage, at this rate, but they still want to track it down. So they can top up the pressure and that with nitrogen tanks on board, so it's not a big issue, but obviously if you've got a leak, you want to check where the leak is, because a leak could get worse and more severe. So it was discovered actually last September that it had slightly decreased, and so this they've been trying to isolate. So basically by moving into the Russian segment, they can isolate the US segment and see if that's where the problem is, and I guess they might move into the US segment and try the other side later on if that's not going to give any information. So that should be okay. All right. Some interesting military news. The Pentagon is going to be launching a task force to investigate UFO sightings. So on the 4th of August, Secretary of Defense Norquist approved the establishment of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. The Department of the Navy, under the auspices of the Under Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, will lead the UAPTF. So they established it to improve the understanding of and gain insight into the nature and origins of these unidentified aerial phenomena. And people may or may not recall the video that the Defense Department released back in April of these strange flying objects which were not explainable. So they're going to be trying to detect, analyse and catalogue unidentified aerial phenomena. and that could potentially pose a threat to US national security. So the Department of Defence has stated the safety of our personnel and security of operations are paramount concern. So they take any incursions by unauthorised aircraft to our training ranges and designated airspace very seriously, and they examine every report. This includes examinations of incursions that are initially reported as UAP when an observer cannot immediately identify what he or she is observing. So Marco Rubio, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee Chairman, was presiding over the hearing on the June 10th, and he asked information pertaining to the unidentified aerial phenomenon. And this is his quote: "We have things flying over our military bases and places where we are conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it is ours, so it's a legitimate question to ask. Frankly, if it's something from outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some sort of technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or Russians or some other adversary." So there we go. So I don't know, it seems to correlate pretty well with coronavirus, so I don't know whether that might be a clue. Who knows? All right. So just to round off tonight, we're just going to have a look at the upcoming launch schedule. Oh, spend on time. So this week on the 26th, we've got a Delta 4 Heavy, the NROL. That's it. These are Melbourne Australia time, 6:16 a.m. Then on the 27th, the 3:05 a.m., we've got 3:05. That seems a bit early. Anyway, it is in New Zealand. Electron returned to flight. So that, because you'll recall they had a problem where they got off the pad, but they failed to reach orbit with their rocket there. And then on the 27th, they got a Falcon 9 SAA 1B launch, 11:24 p.m. Starship SN6, they're talking about 1 p.m. on the 28th of August. Marcus might have more details than I, but this came up on the Space Launch website that I was looking at today, so let's hope. Then the Momo Flight 7, Intertel Technologies out of Japan at midnight on the 31st. Another Falcon 9 Starlink on the 31st at midnight. Oh, they're going to go together. Astra Rocket, it's a maiden flight from Alaska, 2 a.m. on the 31st of August. Gee, the 31st of August is busy. And then Atlas 5 on the 1st of September at midnight. The Vega from French Guiana at 1:51 a.m. on the 1st of September. And then the Soyuz 29th of September at midnight. There's probably a few others, but don't have some time for those. All right, so just a preview for next month. We're going to have a look, as I mentioned before, at the US election and what that might mean for space. All right, now Mike, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Did you show the slide with regard to the book?
Yes, I went through that.
You did. Okay, so we'll have that book, and the author will be on live from the US talking to us about his book. I've read the introductory chapter, and I'm going to smash through the rest of the book. And it's actually really good because it talks about, you know, the fast progress of space, human and other space development back in the heyday, the 50s and 60s. And then it looks at kind of the development from different perspectives, commercial, non-commercial, military, the shuttle, the decisions around that, why it was done, how, all that type of thing. And the fact that, you know, for many of us, missions to Mars have always been 20 years away. It was 20 years away in 1970. It was 20 years ago in 1980, 20 years away in 1990. You get my understanding. So he delves into that and the motivations, the limitations, the opportunities, and kind of why we're where we're at and what we possibly can do to shift the dial. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as the slides that I showed, or Michael showed before, he's got a good background and good knowledge of this subject. And as I say, I've read the introductory chapter, and it's really quite good. So, and we're going to have a giveaway of that book at the next meeting. So make sure you follow our stream and social media, and we'll give you the details about how that can happen. That's it for the formal discussion tonight. But if I don't, Marcus, it looks like you're still there. If anyone has got any comments, questions, or statements they would like to make. Yeah, so the September meeting's on the 28th of September, 7:30 to 9:30.
Yeah, I'm still around. So if anyone has any other questions or anything, let me know.
Anyone wants to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute your mic and go ahead. And Tony Bella's there, I know. Thank you for that. You haven't heard from me, but been so impressed with your graphics. I mean, I don't know how you do it. You're in Australia, is that right? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah. You there?
You're in Australia, yes.
Yes, in Brisbane.
Oh, fantastic. Man, oh man.
Yeah.
They're amazing. The speed that you get them out as well. And I particularly loved your Apollo 50th anniversary stuff that you've been putting out.
Yeah. It's doing. It's actually still doing a bit of the rounds in the States now. I've got someone trying to sell them to a few museums over there, which is always good. But the SpaceX stuff has got me going. I did the Mars mission recently. That was fairly successful. But the SpaceX stuff it's got kind of, it's like got a kind of young blood mentality, and a lot of people are really kind of even the way they talk to the media is quite different to the way NASA talks to the public through their media.
Yeah.
So it's almost like kind of almost has like a rock and roll mentality. I don't know if that's the right way to explain it, but they just are very different at presenting their launches. Yeah.
And I was just going to say the amazing thing since I first started chatting with you, Tony, since we've sort of done these few little video presentations using some of your graphics, like the reaction to this stuff when somebody sees these little animated diagram, these little illustrations sort of pop out on the screen. Now, the comment threads are just absolutely filled with, oh man, I've never heard of Tony. Where's Tony? So everyone's, it's just so great to see. And as you say, there's that cult mentality to SpaceX that, I can't deny that I'm not part of it, but it's just one of those things that's inspiring for everybody. But what sort of got you into doing all this stuff? Obviously you started off with the Apollo stuff. What got you right into it to start with?
I've always been into space. So it's funny because you said you were born 10 years out. I was born in '68, but that made no difference. I was 1, so I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I don't remember anything. But to me that was an inspiring time, and to witness and be a part of what could happen over the next 5 years. I mean, most people thought by the late 80s or mid 80s we were going to go to Mars. Well, that didn't happen. The moon missions were all part of a plan for that next step to Mars, and that just didn't happen. The space shuttle came in, and that's a whole different story. But they just concentrated on low Earth orbit from that point. So I've always been interested in it. But what I have found was doing these graphics, I quickly become an expert at doing the at the subject that you're working on. So up until doing demo 2, I probably didn't know that much about SpaceX and Elon Musk, and now I'm just all in. I'm
impressed by the accuracy of what you do. It's fantastic. Yeah, that's really good.
And certainly when it's inaccurate, I've got plenty of editors out there that are quite happy to point that out for me.
Space geeks are very unforgiving.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that will tell you you're wrong about something. So I know that very well.
I've noticed that Elon Musk replies to you guys a little bit. He's traditionally said that he only employs Americans. Is there the possibility of him employing or engaging you guys on some things? Because there are the restrictions with Australia aren't quite as severe as they are with other countries.
It's actually more a restriction. It's more of a government restriction rather than a SpaceX restriction. You know, there's a lot of rules to say that, you know, as soon as you're dealing with this explosive technology, you know, you've got to have full citizenship, all this sort of stuff. I don't know much about it more than that, but it's more of a legal reason.
I can probably add to that a little bit. So I am doing a little bit of work for a few various third-party sources that are doing that I can't talk about, that are selling a few ideas to NASA. One of the guys, actually no, I can't even say that. But so one of the things when I was doing the Mars poster, if some of you might be familiar with that, I got in touch with Adam. I'm trying to remember his last name. He's the head engineer on the Mars rover project. And it was great. It was engaging. He sent a few emails and tweets back and forth to each other. Then I got a private email saying, due to ITAR restrictions, I'll have to refer you to our public relations officer. Now, oh, you there? Yes.
Yep.
So ITAR, I think, is, someone might be able to correct me on it. I think it's International Treaty on Arms Restrictions or something like that. And within it, it's about rockets and the military side of rockets. And basically, America, you can't pretty much sell plan or have plans up on the web of any of their kind of the more detailed things that they that like what you're seeing here. And for me to do a lot of these things, I need to find as many plans and schematics as I can to draw them. A lot of them are actually just drawn from photos because I can't find detailed schematics or plans on these. So most of them I'll put them together using maybe 100 photos. I'll look at the photos and so that they're not even proper measures. A lot of it's by eye.
That's phenomenal.
But one of the things I wanted to, specifically where they pulled me up on this restriction, was I wanted to know what the color configuration was for the parachute, which they wouldn't tell me. I was told I had it fairly close, but I'm not right, and you'll have to wait for the landing. Oh. And the other one was how many cameras, panorama cameras were on the actual head of the rover, which so part of researching when I do these, I also look at other people's graphics. I have a particular style. My style isn't photo real, and that's not what I'm going for. I'd like to still have it fairly accurate, but it's not about getting it photo real. They still have to for me, I want a kind of hyper real look to them. They're kind of like a stylized look, but they are accurate.
I've just had a tweet come through.
Yeah.
Apparently the parachute design is a picture of Donald Trump. That's why they're keeping it secret.
Yeah. I was almost, as a joke,
overblown and full of air.
I was going to do a little bit of a joke and put up on the try and create a competition and have a bunch of people do like memes of what they think the parachute might look like. I figured it might be a smiley face or something like that, but I think the guy that I was dealing with, he apparently has a bit of a sense of humor. So him telling me you just have to wait was just him having a little bit of a play with me. But yeah.
So Tony, if we want to build some here, we can't get the SpaceX or NASA designs. We'll have to go off your designs.
Well, yes. I can't really talk about it, but I'm doing something at the moment it's not for the Dynetics moonlander. It's a proposal to the company that's making them. Dynetics is the company. It's a proposal to them, but I put in a few of my, I was told by the company that wanted these designs what they wanted, but I added a few of my little ideas, which I thought were logical ideas, which I can't go into, but I'm hoping that these guys at Dynamics look at it and go, hey, that's not a bad idea. maybe they'll use some of it.
So Tony,
Hopefully
is this
you
your
get rewarded.
profession, or are you a graphic artist?
I've been a graphic artist for a newspaper for 30 years, and hitting 50, I realized I wasn't going to have much more of a future in it. So I pulled out, and I'm giving this 3 years of trying to make this as a career. Initially, it was just going to be all types of graphics. Now I'm just concentrating on space, everything space. It won't be just SpaceX. So certainly with Artemis, that which is really exciting, what's happening there, and everything that's happening over the next few years. Yeah, and so it's only been a year of me trying to give this a good go. I'm making a few inroads and name for myself, but you know, it'll happen. I persist.
I'm just on your website now. Obviously, with the quality of your artwork, it would lead to sort of really excellent video simulation and graphics for TV and movies and things like that. Is that an area that you've worked in or looking to work in, or would seem to lend itself quite well
not really,
to that?
because that's a whole other area, other skill. Something like what you're looking at now, that took me 2 weeks to put that together. I guess, yeah, to me, I wouldn't want to just sit there and do the drawings. I like to tell the story, and there is a particular look that I'm going for with these posters. I want you to be able to take in a couple of years from now, look at 20 of my posters and realize in looking at each one, and people will look at them and straight away know the artist that it's a style. I mean, certainly a spaceship looks like a spaceship. So if you just look at one of those elements on its own, without text, without the design element to it, you wouldn't have a clue who did it, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing. We're trying to make it look like an interesting tube, these rockets. But at the end of the day, to me, and I guess that's where my 30 years of experience in newspapers as a graphic designer. So infographics is what I did within the newspapers. So the type of things were when a plane crashed and there was a step-by-step of how that plane crash happened. That was pretty much what the type of thing that I did. And so that's probably the story part is where probably my strongest point. I mean, I actually don't think I think I'm a fairly average artist, but slightly, but I think the combination of storytelling is where I think the power happens.
No, you're wrong there, mate. You're an incredible artist. It absolutely blows my mind every time I see something from you. It really does. And the audience shares this stuff, man. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And like you say, the amount of research, like it's not just the graphic, like the amount of detail in these descriptions, like as you say, there are people that will tell you every little intricate detail here that's wrong. And very rarely do you get much wrong. I've been having a look at, that needs to be tweaked here, this needs to be tweaked there, but you get it pretty spot on first go.
Well, what I'm impressed about is a massive amount of information, but it follows a logical sequence that's easy to navigate. It's not like you're being bombarded. You can still look into an area and see what's going on. It's really well done.
Only as a space geek from the 60s, and I did see the lunar landing, Marcus, and it's a shame you missed it. It was something else. I look forward to the next one. But for Tony, and I've been looking at these infographics for many, many years, and I've got to tell you, this is the best stuff I've seen. So compliments to you.
Well, thank you.
Brilliant. Sorry, Tony, you were going to say something. I cut you off.
No, I mean, there is I think the Apollo 11 one, I kind of hit it on the head with the way I did the to and from element of going to the moon and back. And then I started to think, will I follow that pattern? So there is a pattern, and you're right, there's a lot of words on here. So one of the complaints I do get is, as an infographic, there are a lot of words, but you there?
Yeah, got you.
As an infographic, there is a lot of words on there, but the thing is, I'm my own boss at the moment, so I can put as many words as I want on there, and it seems to be, it seems to work. When it works for me. I did get a bit carried away. I think the Apollo 13 one, I just could. I need an editor. I can't edit myself. I just got so excited about writing, and I'm not sure. People have asked, am I going to keep doing Apollo 14 and onwards? I wasn't planning to, but I also wasn't planning on doing Demo 2 and the Mars mission. So, you know,
I guess a good test of your work would be showing it to a non-space geek and finding out from them if they can follow it and understand the story. I think they would, because, as I say, it does follow a nice pattern.
You hit something right on the head there. What the biggest comment? So I'm on a lot of Facebook pages, a lot of Facebook groups, and the overwhelming response I get is from a lot of teachers who said their kids, when I showed this to the kids, they straight away understood what was happening. It was clear. My balance is to have it clear enough for the layman to be able to follow what's happening, but enough of a bit information that it makes it quite interesting to even the experts out there, and then it's a nice nostalgic piece to put up on the wall, you know.
Absolutely.
Just thought I'd grab a copy of that and show it as you were talking about it. I just thought the Apollo 13. The Apollo 13 was just, I mean, this blows the intricacy of the other two out of the water, I think. Like, there is so much, you zoom right into these modules, just the lander, the limb, all this stuff. It's just mind-blowing when you look at the detail in it. I mean, you can sit here and study it. You can study it for an hour and still not see all the parts to it. It's really beautiful.
I love it. It's got the oxygen canisters as well.
There's a few little details that no one's really ever picked up on, but the type of details that I get into is, if you look at the ship in the capsule in the water, the burn patterns on Apollo 11, 12, and 13. I didn't each poster I didn't repeat. None of the illustrations are actually repeated. They're all slightly different angles and everything. But the burn patterns on the ship in the water are the actual burn. I had to study and look for the right angles and everything of the capsules in the water. So if you were to look at a photo of the Apollo 13 in the water and their burn pattern, so the way the krypton, the foil comes off, that's actually what it all peels off. And then you see the ship underneath. That's only like a sticky tape. It's amazing. It's only just stuck on the outside on the metal skin of the ship. But that just all burns off coming through the atmosphere. And that's what you get, all that little ripping, those little rips. Well, they're all fairly accurate.
Did you do
what
an Apollo 12 one?
Sorry?
Did you do an Apollo 12 one?
Yes, I did.
Lightning strike? I didn't see that.
Mark, I did. I don't know. It's Mark. There's Apollo 12 one there, and I've got the light. Yeah, that was the light. I had so many people said you better put in the quotation SCE. What is it?
SCE to AUX.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm saying, well, of course I'm going to put that in.
There we go.
But there it is. And so it's funny because there's a friend of mine. I got into there's a guy that works at Huntsville. He's he works at NASA, and he's helped me out with a lot of this too. So he doesn't write anything. What he does is he reads over everything I've done, and he's corrected me or pulls me up on a few things, especially my Americanisms. So most of what I do now, I I'll always put miles and kilometers, but I spell it in American. So I get less complaints from Australians than I get from Americans if I spell meter wrong, for instance.
It's 100% true. 100% true. If I spell the word colour in Australian, everyone will lose their mind. But if I spell it in American, no one cares.
I just reminded
you
me.
can have two versions.
Tony, are you likely to do any space shuttle graphics at all?
I have a wish bucket list of things that I want to approach doing. So yes, so it's I guess finding the relevance at the time when it comes up. Suddenly that I just saw recently, and it looks spectacular. I saw a trailer for the new Right Stuff miniseries that's coming to Disney, and I figured, wow, the Mercury is going to come to people's attention again. You know, the whole Mercury, the Mercury 7, that's going to be of interest to a lot of people because the series looks spectacular. It absolutely does. And I thought, well, I've wanted to kind of do a Mercury, but I couldn't think of the right anniversary to do it on. That could be a case. I don't know if I'll have the time to do it because there's so much SpaceX stuff happening, and I want to do a Crew 1. I want to, but I have to think of a different approach to Crew 1. But that's certainly so that was another thing with doing Apollo 14, 15, and 16 and 17. They're going to get a little bit repetitive, so I'm not sure if I'm just not sure, and I don't know enough. I'll have to do a lot of research to find the differences within the missions. I know a lot of people said I have to do 17 because that was the first time a scientist actually went to the moon.
Hey, we've got a Marcus Robinson watching this from New York State in the USA. Welcome, Marcus.
Welcome.
Glad to have you on board.
Welcome.
Just to everyone let them know, we're recording this now, but we'll have this available on YouTube later on. We're proposing to stop recording, but we can still keep chatting if you'd like. So we're going to stop recording in a couple of minutes, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. I was going to ask, are you going to do a graphic on the Starlink test mission that happened? Well, sort of happened.
So that's the bucket
Starlink
list. So what I need to do is get people voting in on what, like I do want the community involved. I'm quite serious about that. So as I get more and more people on Twitter, I am putting it out there as to what people would like to see. It's finding those right missions. So certainly with the space shuttle, the first mission would be an interesting one to certainly do, and of course that had the white tank and everything. But and then yeah.
Are you selling signed prints or anything, Tony? Is that sort of a business model for you? Or
No. So I printed up about 400 or 200 prints for the Apollo 11 50th anniversary, and I think I sold 100 through the Queensland Museum, and I still have 100 here that I can't now give away because they all have 50th anniversary written on them. So I probably made my money back on that. I made my money back on it, but I probably have to find someone that's more willing to and being tied in with the museum, and that's what I'm doing at the moment with a couple of contacts in America. I did sell.
You got an order for one already on the chat.
I sold about 300 or so at the NASA store in. Yep.
Yeah,
one down.
I'll put my name down for one.
maybe if you want, Tony, maybe you could send us some details, and we'll, if you're interested,
we'll clean you out.
We'll put it up for you. And just send people to your website. You got a page in your website for ordering that sort of thing and shipping, or what?
Not ordering. So what I've done is the next best thing is my website. You can download all the posters, at a reasonably high resolution, 150 dpi, you get a decent print out of that. And that's what because the problem with Facebook and to a degree Twitter is you can't read the graphics, the type's so small. So I offer it for free to people on my website. But you can go to, I've set up my Patreon page where people can download 300 dpi images. And I figured that's my cost of a poster for me if they paid $25 odd, and they can download. And a 300 dpi poster, that's as big as I print them, and they come up quite nicely. But until I figure out a better way of doing it, and I have an agent.
And look, you've hit the nail on the head right there in terms of the importance of support for creators out there. This is how to help. You know, a small amount can go a long way when it's multiplied by hundreds of people. And you know, nobody misses $1 or $2 or $3 or $5 a month. But when you sign up with Patreon, you know, I'm lucky enough to have a reasonable number of patrons myself for what I do. I don't, you know, it's a lot harder when you're doing illustrations to get that amount of traction all the time. I've got videos that are seeing, you know, millions of minutes of video. It's a little bit easier for me. For people like Tony, like, absolutely, if you love that work, man, like, go to tonybella.com, you know, follow the Patreon link. For a couple of dollars, you get access to higher resolution graphics, and any of the future stuff that you put at different tier levels. Tony, like that's, and even, you know, you get to collaborate and talk and actually be in sort of an inner circle of the process of this. I think it's fantastic, and for anybody to sort of that is a real fan of this stuff, it's nothing. It costs basically nothing just to be a part of it, and multiply that by a few hundred people, and it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference to me. Would make a huge difference to Tony. So yeah, anyone that loves it, just follow that link. It's a great level of support.
Yeah, and you've been promoting, Marcus, some of the RGB aerial and that pork one, and quite seriously, you make a good argument, and you know, I've been seriously thinking just sending some money across, because it's good work and gives us all a lot of pleasure just looking at it.
I mean, you sort of think about it like that. You know, if you've got, you know, you may only have, you know, if you're absorbing any more than, say, an hour of this a week, you know, collectively between 3 or 4 of us, you probably would be if you're a fan of this stuff. To chuck a couple of dollars in each Patreon, all those people that are involved, like, it makes a big difference. It really does.
Okay, we're going to just take a second. We're going to say goodbye to our YouTube viewers and things like that. Then we'll stick going. We'll keep going. So thanks. If anyone wants to join our next meeting, it's the 28th of September. Go to space.asn.au and you get all the links. So thanks, everybody, and we'll say goodbye to YouTube.
No worries. Thanks, YouTube.
Thank you.
And